Hello, everyone. Hello, it's great to see people are coming in. We'll start in a minute and I'll start introducing our talk today. Uh, First of all, I would like to say hi and thank you so much for joining us in this great event. My name is Regina. I'm an EducationUSA advisor based in Curitiba, Brazil. And I would like to welcome you to the EducationUSA Western Hemisphere LLM webinar series. We have great universities and great representatives talking today. And the topic today is day 2. And the webinar series is held and organized by the Western Hemisphere EducationUSA advisors and promoted throughout the region. So it's great to have you here today and to know there's so many people who are interested in learning about not only LLM, but today, LLM programs, but today is day 2 of the webinar series. And the topic of the day will be how to apply to an LLM program, the LSAT, and financing options. So basically, our event will be held for all these days. We will have panelists talking for about 40 to 45 minutes. We'll have some room for questions, right? So you can type all your questions, you can ask questions throughout the talks. And as soon as we have some time, we will read and pick some. And at the end, you will be able to join each individual room in Zoom by checking the links, both in our chat here and in your emails. So you have the opportunity to, as soon as we finish this part, you will be able to talk to each representatives in each universities you're interested in. Okay, so once again, thank you so much. And Anthony, the floor is yours. And I'm sure we're going to have a great presentation.
Good, excellent. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time and joining us to learn a little bit more about LLM programs in the US. We appreciate you all joining them. As Regina said, my name is Anthony. I am the Director of Admission here at Emory University School of Law. So I've got some of my contact information here. After today's session, please feel free to send me an email or send me a message directly at WhatsApp. I'm always more than happy to talk with folks, whether it's about Emory or about the application process in general. As Regina mentioned, we will all be in our own individual sessions. So if you don't get my information now, please feel free to stop by and learn a little bit more about Emory once we're done with the bigger presentation here as well. But you're going to hear from each one of us. We'll each introduce our school just very briefly. And like I said, you can learn a little bit more in detail about each of our schools after in each of the sessions. And then we each have a different topic to go through to kind of walk you through the actual application process and how you should go about getting your applications into each one of our schools. So we can go on to the next slide. So I just wanted to talk and begin very briefly just to introduce Emory to you all. We are a private liberal arts institution here in Atlanta, Georgia. So in the southern part of the United States. We're right in the heart of Atlanta. We've got a lot of great space, a lot of access to a lot of great things. The law school itself, we offer a general LLM that you would complete in 2 semesters, which leaves you a very flexible curriculum. Emory as an institution specializes in a few areas. So if you're interested in business or corporate law, if you're interested in health law or civil rights law, those are really our areas of strength. And we've got a lot of great options for you. So again, if you're interested, I really look forward to talking with you a bit more about Emory and the application process for our university. But with that, we'll go ahead and get started with our topic for this evening. So we can go to the next slide. So I'm going to start out and just kind of give you the basic foundation of where you should start, but more importantly, when you should start with the application. So schools here in the US, we operate on a pretty advanced timeline. So it does take some planning to get through. I always recommend for students as you're thinking about programs to start doing your research at least about a year ahead of time. You want to make sure you're able to get in contact with schools, attend information sessions, talk with maybe some alumni or professors at the university if you have the opportunity. Obviously, it's not a hard and fast rule, but I think this gives you plenty of time to make sure you're doing your research and finding the right school for you. I know the US can be very confusing a lot of times with our education system. There's a lot of schools to choose from. So you want to make sure that you're finding the right school that will give you the specialties and areas that you need, but is also a good fit for your learning style. The location fits kind of with your lifestyle and where you want to be and all that as well. Um, so I would say probably about 6 months before your deadline is when you want to actually start the application. You want to make sure you leave enough time to get all of your materials in, go through the process, and make sure that all of the logistics of actually getting here to the United States, that you've got enough time to go through. One of those options to keep in mind is to ask if a school has a spring semester start. So fall, which are classes, at least for the Northern Hemisphere, that start in August. Some schools start in September, so you'll want to check each school. But a lot of schools also offer a second point of admission during the spring semester, which are classes that will typically start in January. So it always gives you a nice backup in case the fall timeline might be too tight. It's you'll have a second opportunity to get in. And for some students who are out of school already and aren't necessarily on a graduation timeline from a bachelor's degree, could be a nice opportunity to join during a cycle that you wouldn't have otherwise been there. So always keep that in mind. The main reason I would say you want to give yourself at least 6 months for it, because there's going to be some things that are out of your control. So you can get your statement of purpose together, you can submit all the documents, get everything in together. But oftentimes, and most times, the recommendation letters in particular, they can take a little bit to have the professor or your supervisor or a colleague write that letter for you and submit that over to the university. So you really want to make sure you give them enough time. Don't expect them to write the letter and submit the letter in a day or 2 days. I've seen letters that have taken a month to get to us. So you want to make sure you're able to talk with those folks and get those letters in on time. And transcripts, especially if you're applying to schools and using LSAC during busy times, which actually right now is a very busy time for them with Juris Doctor applications, but also LLM applications coming in, going through the CAS system, which you'll learn a little bit more about later, and them doing the evaluation. Sometimes that can get a little backed up. So you want to make sure there's enough and time for all of those processes to take place and get through. And then, like I mentioned, you also want to make sure that you're getting admitted in a time frame that allows you enough time for visa processing, your interview, the I-20 application, getting all your bank documents, getting all of that in order as well. As we all know, over the last year and a half or so in particular, that's been a very lengthy process, more than usual. So it's really important to make sure you leave yourself enough leeway that you've got the opportunity to really keep that in mind and have, in case anything does go wrong or appointments are booked up for a while, you want to make sure you're able to secure that. We can go on to the next slide. And just to give you a sense, again, this is different for each school. So you'll want to make sure you're researching into the schools that you want to attend and make sure you're keeping up with their deadlines. But on a typical basis, the fall semester, the one that starts in August, is going to be your busiest. That's the more traditional cycle. Deadlines for these programs can range anywhere from December to June. So you'll want to keep that in mind. It's a wide time frame. And every school you apply to will probably have a different deadline. So you want to make sure maybe you keep a spreadsheet of all of those and make sure you're keeping up with the documents and going through. But again, that's some of the nice parts about using LSAC. It can be a little bit easier to keep all of those ducks in a line. And then, like I mentioned, some schools will also have a spring start, which would be starting in January. And those deadlines are typically going to be sometime between November and December to get all of your materials in. So that's just a quick overview of kind of the timing and where you should be at. With that, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague from University of Georgia, just up the road from us in Athens, who's going to talk with you a little bit more about how you should actually go about applying.
Hi, I'm Laura Coggle from the University of Georgia. And as he said, we're very close to Atlanta. It's a university town founded in 1785. And I'll just tell you a little bit about our program before I start telling you about the application process. So we have a flexible curriculum. A lot of our students are studying business law or preparing for a bar exam or studying international law, but we work with students to get them the courses that they're interested in having. The LLM students take classes with JD students, and they have the opportunity to take practical training coursework like externships or business negotiations or mediation, different kinds of practical classes. We also offer mentoring and professional development. And many of our students go on to take US bar exams that are open to foreign attorneys. We do offer a 2-year LLM MBA degree also at the University of Georgia. And just a couple of plus points here, we have a wonderful mild climate with 4 seasons and a relatively low cost of living. It's a university town. And lots of LLM scholarship funding that I can talk to you about more in the chat room. So I hope you'll come visit me in the chat room. Let me get through some of the process first. So keep us in mind and come back to talk to me. Next slide, how to apply. So as was mentioned, some students use LSAC, the Law School Admission Council, which you will hear referred to as LSAC. Some universities take individual law school applications, so you should check the law school website for the specific instructions. Typically, whether you apply through the Law School Admission Council or you apply through the university's application process, there's going to be an application form. You're going to be expected to submit all your transcripts with translations. You're expected usually to write a statement of purpose or a personal statement that's usually about 500 words. And if English is not your native language, you'll be expected to do English proficiency tests. And I'll tell you more about that in a moment. Provide letters of recommendation, and usually there's some kind of a law school application fee. Sometimes the law schools offer to waive that fee. So plan ahead, as you're told, review the instructions, and you can go ahead and set up an account at on LSAC or LSAC at this web address here. It will give you all the explanation there and basically go through the process for you, whether you're eligible to apply, help you find law schools. The law schools have profiles on that website, and there are steps to apply that you can look through there. So one option that you have is to sign up for the candidate referral service, which I recommend to you, because if you do that, law schools can write to you directly and tell you more about their programs or maybe events that they have, and you can learn more about each law school. Next slide. So just to go into a little bit more detail so you understand how it works, what you will be doing is a credential assembly service. So the advantage with LSAC or LSAC is that they will collect your documents there, and then you can send out basically a package to each of the law schools that you want to apply to. That means you don't need to send your transcript for each application. You just do it one time. So there's an application service that you apply for and a document assembly service. And some schools, some law schools will ask you to do the international transcript authentication and evaluation service, but that's not always required. So you can check with the law schools that you're applying to. So when all your the items that I talked to you about before are sent in, the transcripts with the translations, the letters of recommendation, and you fill out the application form on the platform, and they will collect all these items together and transmit them to the law schools. that you ask for to have them sent to. And each school report will cost $30. So that gives you an overview of what they do and how much it costs. As to the English proficiency tests, different law schools will ask for different ones. Generally, the Toefl score or the Ielts score are ones that are used very commonly, and some law schools will allow other scores. So on the LSAC website, you can find out how to send in your English proficiency score as well. You can have it sent directly to LSAC, and then it will be in your account. So once again, just to review, if you sign up for an account on LSAC, you can review different law schools there. You can decide to do different applications. You can send in your documents one time to LSAC and then have them sent to a variety of law schools. On the other hand, some law schools will allow you to apply to them directly. But if you are thinking about applying to many law schools for the LLM program, you might think about using this credential assembly service. So now I'm going to hand it over to my colleague at New York University.
Everyone, so my name is Lauren Godson. I'm the Senior Associate Director for Graduate Admissions at NYU School of Law. So first I wanted to give you a brief overview of the graduate division at NYU, and then I'll just go over the general document requirements of applying to an LLM program. So as one of the largest and most diverse in our nation, our graduate division offers 9 different LLM degrees, the JSD, and some part-time and online options. You have the freedom to design your own academic experience in the Master of Laws program or one of our 8 LLM specializations. And in a specialization, you can take a number of classes in that area and can take some in other fields. And the Master of Laws, you choose classes that match your intellectual interests, whether focused in 1 or 2 areas or taking a broad range of classes. And in conjunction with any of our degrees, students can complete the Advanced Certificate in Law and Business from the NYU Stern School of Business. And many students with a qualifying foreign law degree establish eligibility for the New York bar exam during their LLM studies, regardless of the program in which they enroll. And in any given year, the full-time LLM class is around 450 students, about 75 to 80% of whom receive their first law degree in more than 50 different jurisdictions other than the US. And 8 of our 9 LLM programs enroll between 95 and 100% foreign trained attorneys, the exception being our LLM in taxation, which has about 100 to 112 students. The vast majority of them hold a US JD. So as Laura talked about the CAS report and the LSAC process, I'm just going to go into the documents that are part of a typical application. So as you prepare your required materials, you want to carefully think about the items you're personally responsible for. For your resume, typically you want to include all of your education and work experience, and you want to make sure you account for any time where you weren't working or weren't in school. So any time where it's 3 months or longer, you want to account for that. And typically resumes, CVs are 1 to 2 pages in length. Other than its length, there really are no formatting requirements, so you should feel free to use whatever format you're most comfortable with. And the information in this document is fact-based, what, when, and where. Also in the US, it is common for people to include a brief description of the responsibilities associated with professional positions, or to include student activities, leadership roles while in school, mooting, journals, and the like. Also, don't overlook the opportunity to include information on the resume, including short explanations of items. It is one way in which you can provide more information about an experience or accomplishment for the committee's review. If you're having some difficulty narrowing down topics you'd like to address in your personal statement, you can start with your resume. As an all-inclusive document, you can list all of the experiences that you had in school and work, and it's an exercise that will give you a comprehensive perspective of your past experiences and accomplishments, a moment to take stock of what you've done and relatedly where you aspire to go. And then the personal statement, this is the document with which you have the most latitude, what to include and how to present yourself. So you've already given those interviewing your resume and they've had a chance to review it. So what 2 or 3 things about yourself would you choose to highlight in an interview. So you kind of want to think of the personal statement as your interview for the admissions committee that's reviewing your application. And you want to also address why you're applying. So the personal statement is exercise and reflecting on your past experiences, what they've taught you about yourself, and your motivations for graduate studies. It's also helpful for us to understand how those motivations have led you to apply to an LLM program. Although make sure you remain focused on you and don't spend time perhaps describing, maybe one of our specializations that you're applying to, because we know about our specializations. So once you've looked at your resume and analyzed which experiences will be there only, you will then know what to highlight in your application and your personal statement. So you don't want to repeat things that are already on your CV or repeat things that are already part of your transcript. You want to make sure you're highlighting important things in your personal statement, because it's depending on the school you're applying to, it could have a word limit. And so you want to think about what you want to feature. So versus, like I said, feature what you want to feature in your CV, what you want to feature in your personal statement, and start drafting early. So your first draft will probably be too long, and then you want to cut out some parts of it. So it's a drafting process, and you also want to put it away and then go back to it. So it's a review process for the personal statement as you approach it. And recommendation letters. So keeping in mind that as an applicant to graduate studies, you want to ask someone who knows you as a student or who works with you, and think about how the letters of recommendation work as part of your application. And if possible, it'd be great to have a conversation with your potential recommenders that includes your reasons why you're asking him or her to write you the letter. You should at least ask them those reasons, or tell them those reasons in the email or the conversation you have with them. Importantly, you should not write the letter for your recommender. So you want to make sure you have a conversation and have their agreement to write you a recommendation letter. And you could definitely want to have a conversation about, maybe some project that you've worked on with them or research you did for them that you think it'd be great for them to highlight in the letter they're going to write about you. Of course, they'll write whatever else they wish to, but if you know that you've highlighted a certain work project or research project, you'll know that hopefully they'll touch upon that, and then you definitely won't talk about that in your personal statement. So I'm trying to point out how all these things are interrelated and how to think about them. So at NYU, we only require one letter of recommendation. We allow applicants to submit up to 3. So definitely check the schools you're applying to, and don't just ask for additional letters from people without thinking about why you want them to write you a letter. So more letters means more letters for the committee to read. So definitely think about who you're asking, why you want to add their perspective to your application file, and what are they going to add to your application about you. And if you decide that you want to proceed with letters that are specific to the schools you're applying to, make sure you assign the right letter to the right school. Make sure you talk to your recommender about that, because you don't want to accidentally assign a letter that's meant for another school to a different school you're applying to, because the committee will notice that. So general letters are fine, but definitely talk to your recommender about that. So in sum, each part of the application provides important information about you, which is why you want to think about how all the parts work together, from your personal statement to your CV, resume, and letters of recommendation. Obviously, your transcripts are part of that, but there are things that are within your control, which is why I highlighted those parts. And you want to think about how they all paint a larger picture of you as a candidate. So think about that as you approach your application, and keep track of what you've sent along and to what school. So having a spreadsheet, as Anthony mentioned earlier, to keep track of these things is important to keep yourself organized. So now I'm going to turn the presentation over to my colleague, Hannah, from the University of Minnesota Law School, who's going to talk about required tests.
Oof, my Zoom froze there for a second. All right, I am unmuted, I think. Hello, I'm Hannah Keeter. I'm the Assistant Director of International Programs at the University of Minnesota Law School. I'm delighted to be here. I would be more delighted if I were in Brazil with all of you, but someday we will get back there. So really briefly, as everyone has done, about the University of Minnesota, we're in the center of the country, in the north, pretty close to Canada. It's starting to get cold here, but everybody's all right. We've got a few different degree options. It's a marvelous place to live. I always say we're the best. Not for everybody, but we're all the best. Each of these schools here on this panel is the best for some of you. So attending these types of webinars is really great. So you can find out which is the best option for you. So I hope that you'll join all of us, me especially, but all of us, whoever seems interesting to you after this panel presentation, so you can learn more about what is the best school for you as you study law in the US. So if we could go to the next slide, please. I'm going to talk about required exams, required standardized tests for your application. So the most common, of course, is English. I saw someone put in the chat earlier, do you need a high level of English proficiency? And the answer is yes. Legal English is difficult even for those of us who speak English as our native language. So the standardized tests that are most common are Ielts and Toefl. Each school, of course, the pattern here in the presentation today is each school has their own distinct requirements. So make sure, like Anthony mentioned, a spreadsheet is a really good idea. Make sure you're keeping track of which school requires what. Ielts and Toefl scores are each valid for 2 years. That is a standard set by the organizations running these exams, and that is one that we as law schools adhere to as well. During the pandemic, many of these companies, mainly Ielts and Toefl, I guess, created at-home versions. And so most law schools here will accept these versions if going to an in-person testing center is not possible or it doesn't feel safe for you. The Toefl and Ielts versions are held to the same rigor academic standards as their in-person versions. But you'll always want to check with the schools to which you're applying to confirm whether or not they will accept the at-home version instead of the in-person as well. Duolingo is a relatively new English test that some law schools accept, not all of them. It's a less expensive version of a standardized English test, but it's also not focused specifically on academic content, like the Toefl and the Ielts are. So I did a very unscientific poll of a lot of our peer law schools, and only 1/3 of law schools that I talked to accept Duolingo to meet their English proficiency requirement for the LLM application process. So again, be informed, be aware, make sure you know what is allowable and what is not. The 2 other notes I'll say about standardized English tests is that some schools offer option of conditional admission. So if you require a 90 on the Toefl and you get an 85, they might say, okay, you can be admitted conditionally, and then you have a little bit of an extension to take the test again, or if you enroll in our pre-LLM English program. For some schools, they'll say, okay, you can have a few extra months, we'll figure that out right away, or they'll say you have up to a year or something, and then submit your proof of proficiency again. So you'll want to keep in mind, if you're really close, it might be worth asking. Again, not all schools have this option, but if you're really close and it's important to you that you have some sort of certainty as far as you can with conditional admission, it might be worth asking about. The other thing I will mention about English proficiency is if you're a native speaker, or if you have recently completed a higher education degree where the language of instruction was English, you might be eligible for a waiver. It's certainly worth asking if either of those circumstances apply to you. Any of us here on these panels, whatever admissions representative for whichever school you're applying to, will be able to confirm, given your circumstances, what implications that might have for you later on, and whether or not you'd be eligible. I think that's it. All right, next slide, please. All right, there are other required standardized exams in a lot of US graduate education, most commonly the LSAT. And so that's the law school admission test or the graduate records examination, the GRE. Neither of those exams is required for any of the LLM programs that we represent here on this panel. In all of my attending conferences and traveling and just talking to colleagues who are also LLM representatives who aren't here today, I've never heard anyone say that their LLM programs need either the LSAT or the GRE. So whether or not they're required is different from whether or not you can submit it and have it be reviewed. If you feel strongly, that either the LSAT or the GRE is a really good indicator of your capabilities, of what you are capable of and can do, You can ask the admissions professionals for the school that you are applying to if it will even be considered. Again, as part of my very unscientific poll, none of the schools on this panel will even consider that. So if you submit that, that's not going to end up going to the committee to look at as part of whether or not you'll be admitted. So it's probably more worth your time to just work toward a high score on the TOEFL or Ielts instead. All right, next slide, please. All right, so far we've covered some very important parts of the application and admission process, when to apply, how to apply, what is required, what tests might be required. So now I will hand it over to my colleague Mauricio to talk about a very important topic, how to pay for law school.
Yes. Okay, so good afternoon, boa tarde, buenas tardes. My name is Mauricio Pajon, and I'm the Director of Admissions at the University of Texas School of Law's LLM program. So just very briefly on our program, and I'd love for you guys to come and visit with me in our Zoom room after, and I can answer individual questions. I know we're getting quite a few questions in the chat, and we're all trying to respond to them as best we can, but definitely visit with me, visit with my colleagues to learn about our individual LLM programs, because we definitely have, we as admissions experts have a lot of info to share with you. Very briefly on our program, we're a small boutique LLM program of a maximum of 50 seats. We're located in sunny Austin, Texas. We've got 6 LLM concentrations. So if you're interested in business law, cybersecurity, energy, arbitration, environmental law, human rights, Latin American and international law, or a very flexible U.S. law for foreign lawyers LLM, definitely come visit with me. I can tell you a little bit more about our program. We do have, as my colleagues have already said, courses that really sort of will help you expand the depth and breadth of sort of your sort of legal knowledge when it comes to sort of the theory. But then there's also a lot of courses that really delve into sort of the practical, sort of enhancing your practical lawyering skills. I'm going to talk today a little bit about sort of a 6-step plan for securing funding for your LLM, which is something that's on everybody's minds. So next slide, please. All right, so first and foremost, you want to have a plan, right? A goal without a plan is just a wish, so keep that in mind as you begin to plan for your LLM. As Anthony said, you want to give yourself, anywhere from 6 months to a year to really sort of plan this out. And in this case, secure funding. Definitely tap into EducationUSA and start, thinking about the possibility of a Fulbright. I know that application process is 12 to 18 months, so you definitely want to plan ahead. And here's some questions. I've listed sort of some questions that you want to ask yourself, right? What is the total cost? And I think here you definitely want to, as my colleagues have said, have a spreadsheet, for all of your schools that you're applying to, whether you're applying to 3 or 10 or 20 schools, have a spreadsheet with, visit the university's websites, visit the LLM program's website, and have a spreadsheet of, what's the total cost, and be asking yourself, how much is tuition? What about other expenses like, do you want to take a bar exam? Housing, food, just be asking yourself sort of what, how much this is going to cost you. How much have you saved? Are you going to be able to contribute? Can your family help? We've had students in the past whose employers have actually sort of provided funding support for their LLM. And that's, I think, a question that I think you should feel comfortable, talking about with your employer. Would they be willing to support a part or all of your LLM? Another question is, would you be willing to work on campus? Next slide, please. All right, so in terms of, this six-step plan, first research, right? You want to start early. You want to review each program's scholarship opportunities webpage. most, if not all, LLM programs are going to have a website. They're going to have a scholarship opportunities page. Look to see what kinds of internal scholarships they offer, what kinds of internal third-party scholarships they might offer, and even what external funding opportunities there are out there, whether it's, because it's your country or because maybe you want to study cybersecurity law, and there may be some external scholarship opportunities for folks wanting to study cybersecurity law. And when I say, internal scholarships, I'm referring to those offered by the program. For our program, for example, we don't require a separate application. All admitted students are automatically considered for our internal scholarships. Then we have something called internal third-party scholarships, and those are offered by sort of scholarship partners, external funding organizations that offer funding to our admitted students. Those do require a separate application and a separate personal statement, but so be aware of that. Again, add this to your spreadsheet and know what those eligibility requirements and deadlines are. For some scholarships, especially those external ones, you need to have been admitted. For example, some of ours, the deadline is actually for those internal third-party ones offered by our scholarship partners. Some of those deadlines are March 1st. Well, that is our priority deadline for application. So if you wait till March 1st to apply to our program, there's no way we're going to be able to admit you in one day so that you can submit an application to an internal third-party scholarship. So just be aware of that. Let's see here. Next, consult, right? So you've got us, right? Admissions experts, at the various schools. Ask us questions, send us an email, attend a virtual admissions information session, which is something that so many of us, if not all of us, are doing these days. Get in contact with Education USA, explore your options. We are here for you. Ask yourself and work with Education USA to figure out if a Fulbright scholarship is a good option for you, knowing that you can't really stay and maybe do optional practical training for a year after your LLM if that's something you want to do, because you've got to go back. So be asking yourself these questions, tap into resources, tap into admissions experts, because we are here for you. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. We are here to help you, and we really are only an email away. Let's see. Next is just apply, right? Start early. Proofread your application and your essays for scholarships. If you're thinking about applying to an internal third-party scholarship or an external scholarship, submit them by the deadline or earlier, and check with the scholarship. Let's say that the LLM program that you're applying to requires a separate application for an internal scholarship, or it's an internal third party that you're applying to for a scholarship. Make sure that they received your application by the deadline and that it is complete. Next is just reuse. You don't need to be reinventing the wheel here. You can take your personal statement that got you in and got you admitted to an LLM program, retool that, and sort of, if you're thinking about applying to an internal third party or an external scholarship, go ahead and just, tweak it, and make it sort of personalize it for that sort of scholarship committee. But you don't need to sort of reinvent the wheel. You can take that personal statement that got you into the LLM program in the first place, and submit that. Just remember, again, personalize and proofread your application essays for scholarships. Next is just communicate, right? If you're awarded, let's say a Fulbright, either before or after you're admitted to an LLM program, communicate that to your sort of admissions officers, as that could increase your chances. Possibly, it's never a guarantee, but I'll give you an example. At the University of Texas School of Law, in our LLM program, if we get an applicant who has a Fulbright scholarship, we're allowed to nominate them for a non-resident tuition exemption award, which brings tuition down from the non-resident level, which is about $47,000, to $31,000. So that's a $17,000 sort of, tuition reduction right there. So definitely communicate and let those LLM programs that have admitted you or that you've applied to that haven't admitted you just yet, let them know that you're sort of, that you are getting these other scholarships from other sources, because it could be a way to sort of leverage, right, the kind of scholarship package that then they are able, that the LLM program is able to provide you with. And then lastly, alternatives. And I think this is really important, right? You want to be optimistic, right? That you're going to get into your top programs, that, you're going to get a full tuition scholarship or a full ride scholarship. But the fact of the matter is that, that may not be possible for some schools. For example, at our school, we're a big state university, meaning that our tuition is the lowest among the top 20 law schools. However, we do not give full tuition or full ride scholarships. And by full ride, I mean tuition plus a living stipend. That's something that our program cannot do. So, these are questions that then you need to be asking yourself. Well, my top 1 or 2 schools did not give me the scholarship I want or need, but my 3rd or 4th option did. So then you have to ask yourself, well, where does it make sense for me to go? And other questions, right? Are you willing to work on campus? Are you willing to take out a loan? For example, the RO loan for Latin America, that's a no interest loan while you're in school. And so just lastly is just, remember to stay focused, resilient, and again, sort of, approach this with a kind of realistic optimism to perform your best and achieve maximum satisfaction and establish a competitive edge for yourself. So thank you very much for your time. And with that, I want to introduce my colleague, Robin Alvary from the University of San Diego School of Law, who will be talking next.
Thank you, Mauricio. As you said, I'm Robin Alvary from the University of San Diego School of Law. We are located in San Diego in Southern California, which is about 2 hours south of Los Angeles. So being a coastal California community, it's not the cheapest place that you will find in the United States to live. However, if you're looking at a California school, it is a more affordable option than you would find in Los Angeles or in the Bay Area in San Francisco. So on this slide, you'll see a shot of campus. We are right next to the Pacific Ocean in San Diego Bay. It's a private Catholic university, and we're the only university in the city with the law school. So it was established in 1949. And as I mentioned, it is a Catholic university, although you do not have to be of the Catholic faith to attend here. We've been recognized as one of the most beautiful campuses in the United States during the past 5 years or so, done really well there. So we're honored for that distinction. We have 5 LLM programs. One of them is designed specifically for international candidates. It's called the LLM in Comparative Law. The name does not mean that you have to study comparative law. It's just meant to reflect the international nature of our students and the different legal systems that they come from. Within that program, you have the option to study one of 6 optional concentrations, from business and corporate law to criminal law, environmental law, intellectual property, international law, and finally taxation. The program is flexible enough to allow bar exam subjects to be taken if you're interested in sitting for a bar exam. And you will be in the classroom with JD students as well as the LLM students in the other programs. And as far as scholarships, we offer automatic scholarship consideration for all full-time applicants. So there's no separate or special application required for a scholarship. My role is primary LLM admissions and also recruiting. And I'm also called the DSO, or designated school official, for the School of Law. So I assist any international student with their visa process. So basically I'm a primary F1 student advisor for those of you who may need a visa. We would be working together to get that done. So we can move on to the next slide, and I will take you through 2 topics. One is work experience, and it's a common question from applicants. Is work experience necessary? And for most universities, I believe all of on this panel, but check with each school to make sure. The short answer is no, at least here at USD. Work experience is not required to be considered for the LLM program. However, there are some benefits of having work experience under your belt. First of all, it tends to show a stronger application, I think, than somebody who has no work experience, who's just fresh out of law school. Secondly, work experience can help prepare you for the rigorous LLM curriculum that you will be taking, no matter which school you go to. And finally, having work experience can be factored into a scholarship consideration. So for example, if you have candidate A and candidate B, they both came from the same school, similar academic credentials, one has work experience and the other doesn't, the one with work experience may get a bit higher merit scholarship award because overall they would be viewed as slightly more favorable candidate. Now, it will vary a little bit from candidate to candidate, but those are just some things to keep in mind as far as what work experience can do for you. That being said, the vast majority of our applicants tend to be right out of law school, and the only work experience they have may be some internships that they did while they were a law student, which is fine. That's not a problem at all, and we admit a lot of people with no work experience. So I think that covers everything I wanted to do here. So let's move to the next slide, please, which is related to financing options. Now, it's kind of hard to figure out where to fit this in, this OPT or optional practical training, because it's really done after the fact of your legal education. So I guess you can see it as a way to finance or pay for any bills that you may have left over from law school. So OPT, or optional practical training, it's an employment benefit that's available to F1 student visa holders. And for LLM students, it typically means that you'll be doing it after you complete a 1-year LLM program, and you're automatically eligible to apply if you are an F1 student. And so you get to apply for a whole year of time to gain experience related to the legal field. So when can you apply? Normally it's going to be a window of time about 3 months prior to your graduation. That's the optimum time to apply for this. And our International Center here on campus assists students with that application process, and they send out reminders to let you know when it's time to start thinking about applying for OPT and actually walk you through that process. The sorts of jobs that qualify for OPT can be anything law or legal related. It can be with a government agency, it can be with a private law firm, really any nonprofit, any sort of job that deals with the law or legal studies would qualify for OPT if you're a graduate law student. Now, some students will say, well, what if I can't find a job, or if it's only part-time? Part-time is fine. You can work part-time for one or multiple employers. You can also work full-time. But if you can't find employment at all, you have a 90-day window. So you are allowed to basically be unemployed for up to 90 days post-graduation. If you have not managed to secure OPT employment by that time, then you would be required to depart the country. Most of our students, by and large, have found that it's not a problem getting at least part-time employment to support that OPT request. So that's how OPT works. If you're in a different kind of program, like a JD, which goes for a longer period of time, you might be able to use OPT while you're still in your academic program. But for the most part, LLM students, that's the population I deal with, and they would be doing it post completion of their degree. So you do your degree, you're done, and then you can stay for up to 1 more year doing OPT work. So that is all I have to say, and I would like to introduce our next speaker, who is Tara Maloud from St. Louis University School of Law.
Thank you, Robin. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Tara Maloud. I am the Assistant Director of International Admission at St. Louis University School of Law. I would like to start with a brief description about SLU Law, or St. Louis University School of Law. We are located in the state of Missouri. We are in the Midwest, 5 hours driving south of Chicago. We are a Catholic Jesuit school, private school, and we have a rich history consisting of strong connection to the community and a long tradition of public service. SLU Law's location is in the heart of the city of St. Louis, offers students unparalleled access to leading law firms, corporations, government agencies, and nonprofit organizations, and a unique opportunity to see the law in action. A short briefly talk about the LLM, our LLM program. It's pretty much similar to what my colleagues mentioned in terms of description of the program and the process of application, scholarship, and everything else. Our highly qualified students are offered a comprehensive curriculum with significant coursework opportunities in international and comparative law, health law. We have the #1 health law program in the United States, employment law, business, commercial, tax law, criminal litigation, civil litigation, urban development, immigration, land use and environmental law, and of course, intellectual property. Opportunities are also available for coursework in St. Louis University School of Business, Public Health, and Social Justice, as well as 44 other graduate programs. Our LLM students may receive partial or full tuition scholarship. We have a merit-based scholarship that doesn't require a separate application, but we also have a need-based assistantship. Those needs to be communicated with us because it has some requirement. My topic today would be, next slide, please. The topic is, when you think about studying LLM and all the opportunities and challenges that comes with it, you may ask yourself whether it's a good idea to go to the United States or anywhere else to study LLM or not. There's a lot of benefit coming up with the studying LLM, but we would like you to know about 8 to 10 most common benefit that comes with studying LLM in the United States. The first one is subject specialization or change of career. My colleague talked about the LLM and our program also. We have 5 tracks with the LLM. We have tax, employment and labor, we have health law, we have business and comparative law, and we also have intellectual property. So an LLM is an excellent opportunity to dive into an in-depth study of a particular area in the law that you have been interested in when pursuing your LLB certification. There are a variety of LLM subjects that you can focus on, and specialize in one area can be very beneficial when you are choosing a firm to be a part of and help to give you the competitive edge when applying for a job. The second benefit of studying LLM is building experience and skill development. Studying an LLM will give you advanced skill in different areas such as critical analysis, research, negotiation, persuasive speaking and writing. This makes an LLM a great choice for those planning to have a legal career, since it's respected employer certification and is acknowledged as providing the necessary skills to be successful in law in general. The third benefit, which is, in my opinion, one of the very best reason or important reason for studying LLM is to network. One of the most significant advantage of an LLM is that it gets you many more law connections. While you are studying your courses, you will meet fellow LLM students from different countries around the world. You will meet law academics and representatives from legal firms and networking events, because usually the schools organize many events for networking, whether for LLMs or JDs or both together. There will be many networking events such as happy hour, dinner, from things from networking events from that nature. these connections that you make in those networking events can give you more opportunity to get a great job and to start off on your career path. The fourth benefit of studying LLM is if you think, or if you would like to become a solicitor or a barrister. And many students who want to be a solicitor or barristers undertake the LLM program. It's an addition to the legal practical training, LPC, or bar professional training courses, which are both professional legal training courses that allow you to become a solicitor or a barrister. And LLM gives in-depth knowledge and develops your analytical, critiquing, and evaluative skills, which will be useful in your chosen career. Another benefit is just adding your LLM on your CV, or some people call it a resume. An LLM qualification is a great way to fill any gap on your CV. Many employers are very keen to hire lawyers with LLM certifications due to it being indicative of advancement in law. Subjects and competence, in short, having an LLM on your CV is likely to give you the edge when being shortlisted for a job interview at a law firm over those who have not done their LLM program. Of course, adding the LLM to your CV, and if that gives you the benefit of, getting the job, the other benefit is to negotiate the salary. So LLM qualification, adding value to your CV and providing the opportunity for career advancement and new career opportunity. And LLM can also help mature students justify and negotiate their salaries with the employer. Another benefit is having the LLM degree can be used as a stepping stone for those who want to follow an academic route. For example, those who want to study a PhD, by studying at a postgraduate level of an LLM, the student will, have a better view of whether academia is for them, and if they want to move on to study a PhD or a doctorate degree. Another benefit of studying LLM, of course, is when you do the LLM in the United States, it's a great way to improve your English language. And not only you are learning a new language, but you are also gaining a qualification. The LLM facilitates an immersion into the new culture, creating an avenue for you as a foreign students to mix with the locals. It is possible that many students who come here to study LLM continue to live or relocate to the United States permanently after the degree. So this is basically, in short, like 8 benefits of studying LLM. If you have any specific questions or about our program and everything, I look forward to communicate with you through my private Zoom.
Okay. All right. So I'm back. I just, first of all, once again, I want to thank you, and namely Anthony, Laura, Lauren, Hannah, Mauricio, Robin, and Tara. We would like to thank you immensely for the wonderful presentation. And this was so complete and thorough that all the questions were answered while you were presenting and in chat. So we're really glad to see people are really interested in translations and scholarships. That's a question we get a lot, right? So scholarships, the funding, and learning more about the process. So it's been amazing. Before we go, because we will move on to the individual rooms, and please make sure all participants or attendees that on your email and here in the chat, you have all individual Zoom rooms so that you can access and talk directly to the universities. But I would like to ask you just one more thing. If you can give us a word of advice, if you had one tip, a final tip to inspire and to help international students to apply to an LLM, what would you say? Your wisdom and experience will help a lot. So I think that's a good way for us to end this part. Who would like to take the question, or more than one person?
I'll take it.
Thank you.
Okay, so my first and only advice, I will leave the rest. We have a lot of advices, of course, but I will leave the rest for my colleagues. But my only advice is to start early and communicate a lot with us. Ask questions, reach out for everything. I mean, we have a lot of information on our websites, and sometimes it could be overwhelming for the student to understand, to, you know, navigate everything in the website. So reach out to us. And a lot of time things are a lot easier when the student reach out to us personally by email or, you know, phone call or anything. It's easier than what is listed in the website. So reach out to us.
Perfect. Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, so I'll go. I would just say, think a lot about how you want to tell your personal story, because the admissions people have a lot of applications to read, and you don't want to try to sound like someone else. Try to be yourself and honest about, you know, where you're at and what you're trying to do and what you're proud of and how you think that the LLM would help you. So just think about your personal narrative so that it will stick with us. We'll remember you.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And it's not only one tip, there are so many and they're so rich, right? Thank you so much. So I would just like to remind you all to copy and paste the links on your computer so that you can go to individual rooms, right? Make sure you talk, you ask questions, and you get all you can from this experience of talking to the universities, the representatives. That will be great. I would like to give just one word of advice as an advisor, an EducationUSA advisor, is just reach out to the EducationUSA advisors in your region. You can ask us questions in all the Western Hemisphere. We have plenty of offices, so make sure you do things early. Look for people who know about application as EducationUSA advisors, and Western Hemisphere group of advisors. Thank you so much for being here with us, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy the Zoom rooms right now. Okay, so thank you, Marina.
Good night. And yes, on behalf of EducationUSA from the Western Hemisphere, we just want to thank all our presenters and our students for being here tonight. And we hope that you continue this conversation. These Zoom links are in the chat. I will keep posting it. They are in your emails if you registered for today's session. And I'll also put it on the screen, okay? And we'll keep this room open another 10 minutes just so you can come back and check if you need to, but make sure you copy and paste it somewhere and visit as many rooms as you can. Talk, ask all of your questions, and we hope you have a great night.
Thank you, and have a good night.
Thank you
You all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.